Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. The vote of any committee, it's not dependent on the approval of anyone else. Once the urge for advancing in spiritual life arises within the heart of any living entity, that living entity may take advantage of all the resources available to come closer to Krishna. Resources include Krishna within the heart, who is always giving instruction. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. To those who are serious and sincere about devotional service, Krishna from within the heart gives good instruction how to move ahead, how to find advanced devotees to associate with, and so forth. And we have the freedom to take advantage of that intelligence, that instruction that's given by Krishna within the heart. And then there are scriptures which are divinely inspired and which are provided specifically to guide human beings how to improve their lives materially and spiritually, and ultimately how to go back home, back to Godhead, how to reawaken their relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And those scriptures are speaking directly to us. Anyone who takes them seriously will develop an intimate relationship with those scriptures. For instance, Bhagavad Gita. For one who is serious about devotional service and who discovers the Bhagavad Gita becomes his or her best friend. And a devotee will carry the Bhagavad Gita wherever he or she goes and read from it every day and feel that he or she is getting direct instruction from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, speaking for his or her benefit to go back to Godhead. So it's an important subject matter, sadhana, and we'll review some of the things we talked about over the last couple of days, and then we'll talk about a few other new ideas which we haven't discussed yet, and then we'll take reflections from what we've heard, what you've heard, what we've discussed over the last few days, and try to consolidate some of the points. Does that sound like an okay plan?
Yes.
Okay. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You can turn the microphone down just a tad, please. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Strict, serious, and sincere. We talked about that last two sessions about powerful sadhana. Strictness means to tighten or draw tight, not allowing deviation or relaxation of rules or discipline. This is a description of Vidhi Bhakti. Vidhi, or rules-driven bhakti, means that one attaches oneself to the rules of the scripture very tightly and follows them carefully. Those who practice devotional service and disregard the scriptural rules and regulations are described by Rupa Goswami, Shruti Smriti Paranadi Panchatriki Vidambina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir Utpatayaiva Kalpate. devotional practice that doesn't follow the Shastra, like the Shruti or the Smriti or the Panchatriki. These are different categories of scripture. Becomes a disturbance to the society of devotees who are serious about devotional service. So being strict means to observe the Shastra. And in fact, when speaking in spiritual circles, an advanced devotee will always cite Shastra when making a point. One simply doesn't willy-nilly make points out of speculation, but must tie them to the scripture and say, my idea, my postulation is tied to a particular verse or scripture. And then it becomes accepted. Otherwise, not. This is part of strictness. Also, one should be strict in one's own practice and not think that I've reached a certain level and therefore I can let up in my practice. If we open the door for Maya just a little bit, she'll put her foot in the door and then move in. So you have to be careful. And even advanced devotees who have such a taste that they're not required to follow the regulative principles, the strict process of devotional service, do so anyway to set an example for others. And we talked about strict in regards to the phrase Pashanera Reka, which means lines on stone. And this is a reference to the devotional service of Raghunath Das Goswami, who is our Prayojana Acharya, that is the teacher of the ultimate goal of devotional service, situated in the highest position, who is so strict in his observance of his daily practice of devotional service that the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita says his practice was like lines on stone, immovable. It's actually a great solace to have such a practice, because otherwise I am subject to the dictates of the mind. And the mind may decide to do any old thing at any old time. And if I have my practice, then there's a way in which I have refuge. And if it's a deep enough practice in which there's a groove worn in the stone of my mind in practicing it, that it's much easier to resist the whimsical dictates of the mind and to stay steady in one's devotional practice. We also talked about serious, which means demanding careful application. Serious, the definition. Demanding careful application. We must apply carefully what we've learned. Application is everything ultimately, because theoretically we can understand many things, but until we apply it, it doesn't really count. People almost do many things in life. In fact, one can live a life of almost doing so many things, and at the end not accomplish much of anything at all. Almost doesn't count. One must actually try, must actually do and apply. Application is miraculous, in fact. Even entrepreneurs who are experienced know that you can sit around and talk about starting a company. You can even develop an extensive, elaborate mission statement, but sooner or later you have to get going. In fact, Steve Jobs used to have a saying that to his engineers who are always trying to perfect the technology and the Apple products, that you have to ship. Ultimately, you have to ship. It has to go out. You have to stop somewhere and say it's got to go out. And similarly, we have to get going at some point and apply what we're hearing. It has to become real to us and practical. And serious also means substantial in terms of size, number, or quality. Substantial. So you have to do enough so that you can outweigh the other aspects of your life which are vying for your attention and which are a distraction from devotional service. You have to do enough substantial practice of chanting Hare Krishna, of hearing from the Shastra every day and so forth, so that you can develop a taste, so you can outweigh the other obligations that you're born with, the other debts that you must repay. What about the ultimate goal of going back home, back to Godhead? That has to, at some point, become a priority in one's life. And even at a certain stage when it may seem difficult to perform devotional service every day because of so many other obligations, one must have that in one's mind foremost, that the ultimate goal really is to go back to Godhead. All the other obligations that are in relationship to the body are temporary and will not be consequential in the end. But whatever practice I am able to perform in devotional service will have an eternal effect and is permanent. And then we talked about sincerity. So these three words, strict, serious, and sincere. Could everyone please repeat that?
Strict, serious, and sincere.
Yeah, strict, serious, and sincere. Sincerity means clean or pure, free from pretense or deceit. Pretense. Why pretend? Just be really who you are and practice from the level that you're able to practice at this point, and have a genuine desire to advance in devotional service. Keep that in your heart and protect it. So we also talked about the grahas or grabbers. Everyone has some influence on our life and is therefore a kind of a graha or grabber. Therefore, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asked, who is a devotee, he said, Asat Sangha Tyag e Vaishnavachar. A devotee is someone who avoids materialistic people. Materialistic person means someone who's not interested in Krishna consciousness, who doesn't think that Krishna consciousness is the ultimate goal of life. They think it may be one of many goals, it's relative, or it's not important at all, or it's just a concept that somebody has. Mukharvin, you can turn that down even a little bit more for some reason. And so, we should be aware that everywhere we go and everyone we meet is having an effect on us. Purusha prakritistohi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam gunasangosya sarasad yoni janmasu. The cause of our situation in various positions in life, if you'd like to know, why you ended up where you are right now, in the body you have, with the kind of facility you have for wealth or happiness or distress, it's because of your association. This is what Krishna says. Karanam guna sangosya. Because of your association with various grahas, grabbers, modes of nature, you've acquired a certain kind of demeanor, and you have a situation now in life because of that. So now if you want to change the direction you're going, what should you do? Based on that information. Accepting that premise, now what do you do? Pardon me? Pray to Krishna? Yeah, but in that's absolutely correct. But in the context of what I'm asking, I'm saying the premise is whatever we have now, whatever direction we're going, is based on the association we've had in the past. And therefore, what would we do about it? Pick right association. I'll take that answer. that's something that we can do, and that's something we must do. For practice in any field, you must pick the right association. Prabhupada points this out in the Nectar of Instruction, that if someone's serious about financial matters, they'll find themselves a financial group, investors, and they'll go spend time. If someone's interested in building a temple, they'll go over to someone's house and they'll develop a little think tank and they'll say, how are we going to do this? And they'll start talking about it and they'll come up with ideas and then they'll plan it out how to do it. And if someone's interested in saving the border collie, they will go to a border collie group and they'll talk about it. Everyone forms associations in order to move forward in their discipline. And devotees also form groups of association, and that's vital for advancing in devotional service. Asat Sangha Tyag E Vaishnavachar. And also, you must disassociate yourself with those who are asat, those who are not interested in Krishna, because that kind of association will have a deleterious effect on one's advancement. So God helps those who help themselves. It means we have the freedom to make such choices to move ahead in our practice of devotional service. That's really good news. And that's actually the one thing that's exciting about being in a human body, is we're afforded that freedom to make the choices. You don't have to stay the same as you are now. You can make a voluntary choice to adjust your situation and move in a different direction. And now all you need is information. Once you have the impetus to change, you need information about how to change. And if you have faith in that information, you simply need to apply it. This is practice. So knowledge and practice are the two elements that are necessary to improve oneself. And this is the purpose of human life. Partivad dharano dumas tasmadagnis trahi mayaha tamasastu rajas tasmat satvam yad brahmadarshanam. The Srimad Bhagavatam says the world conducted of these three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, is meant to be transcended. Step by step, one must raise oneself from the mode of ignorance to the mode of passion to the mode of goodness, and then become transcendental to the mode of goodness and go back home, back to God. Possible? Yes or yes?
Yes.
Absolutely possible. And if one lives with this possibility emblazoned in one's heart and mind, then life is exciting. It's an exciting challenge. How to achieve the impossible, that is going back home, back to Godhead. It seems practically unthinkable that one could attain such a destination. When we hear about Dhruva Maharaj, we hear about Prahlad Maharaj, the great devotees of the Lord. But these scriptures encourage us to practice on, to take it up. And they say that if we follow in the footsteps of these examples of pure devotees who have gone back to Godhead, then we'll achieve the same destination. Knowing this, devotees become inspired to do more and more service, to improve their practice. In fact, we vote with our feet. We say in economics, money is called dollar votes. I learned this in my economics class at San Francisco State University. Money is called dollar votes. How many votes do you get? How many dollars do you have? This is in economics, the voting system. Those who have more dollars get more votes. They get more say in how things are done. And they have more freedom economically because they can just spend money and adjust their situation. That's called dollar votes. So in practical application of practice, or I should just say in practice, we vote with our feet. We get to vote with our feet. What is our intention? We vote that with our feet. And that's very important because we show up for those things that are important to us. ultimately. I may say otherwise. I may say, oh, you're very important to me, but I never show up. So then what does it actually mean? It doesn't mean much. So we have to develop this sense of purpose and impetus. And this requires some introspection. So thinking about why we're doing our practice and realizing that we want to go back to Godhead, we make it a goal, will be a stimulus for our practice in devotional service. So, the beginning stages, 4 regulative principles are practically unheard of in the world today. There's no illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling. These seem like a high mountain to climb for many people. But one who observes these 4 regulative principles has a good foundation for then practicing transcendental activities. Otherwise, there are too many distractions. For instance, in intoxication, one's never sure about one's advancement in spiritual life if he takes intoxication, because our perception of our advancement, our ability to perceive our advancement is very subtle. And when we take foreign substances into our body that alter our consciousness, our ability to perceive that advancement in devotional life is hindered. And we're left with the question, am I actually making advancement, or is it the chemical that's giving me the ability to do that? For instance, if one takes stimulants, then there's a way in which you never know if you actually have energy or not. Because it may be the caffeine that's pushing you along and making you a little bit better than everyone else. Like sometimes athletes, recently there have been a spate of revelations about so-called superior athletes who were taking performance-enhancing drugs and then admitted afterwards that they had done so and that they couldn't have done it otherwise. They couldn't have moved ahead of the pack unless they had taken that. And one loses one's self-esteem by doing that, because you're saying that I don't have inherently what it takes to be steady or to be enthusiastic. I need some foreign substance. And if we go through the other 4 regulative principles, there are ways in which the breaking of these hinders our ability to see our advancement or to advance or to develop the finer qualities that are necessary to see Krishna within the heart, to hear Krishna's instructions with a pure mind and so forth. So this is an excellent practice, the 4 regulative principles, observing these very strictly and studying them. What are they? Why are we performing them? This is a kind of a practice that many people don't enter into, but those who do find their lives very much stabilized, and they have a great advantage for moving ahead on the spiritual path. It's not something that we approach people with immediately, because Rupa Goswami's formula was yena tena prakarena mana Krishna Vaishayat. First, think of Krishna. After that, you can think about following rules and regulations. If we introduce these first, people may be hesitant because it seems like you're asking them to give up their very life. After all, most kinds of material enjoyment are based on the indulgence in what these four principles prohibit. And then a prescription of 16 rounds a day. This is a number. 16 is a number. There are other numbers you can look at, but 16 is a number set by our founder Acharya. So when there's a set number, the tendency of the human mind is to want to go after it. If there's no set number and you say, okay, well, whatever you like, then you may vacillate. One day you might be encouraged to do a certain number, another day you may not. But if there's a standard set, which is more or less absolute, then you have something to work towards. And when you have something to work towards, you can improve yourself step by step, and you can attain that goal. It's altogether possible. So these are examples of goals in devotional service. And we also talked about how out of 64 items of devotional practice, 5 are very powerful, mysterious, inasmuch as just by having a little contact with them, one can attain perfection, even if one doesn't have faith in them. And those are hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, living in a holy place like Mathura, associating with devotees, chanting Hare Krishna, and worshiping the deity. These 5 items. So again, these are numbers, these are lists of particular practices. Prabhupada says in his Bhagavad Gita commentary that when the mind doesn't have a goal, it becomes morose and lost. It's just a fact that everyone needs a goal. One's lackluster performance in life comes from not having a clear goal that one is after. So those who would want to advance in Krishna consciousness should be clear about what their goals are and should have them in their mind's eye and be pursuing them. We talked about a verse from the Madhya Lila 22:128, which described the 5 most important of the 64 items. And then we talked about how these are 5 elements that are very important for practice. One is practice is performed with the proper attitude. Because in Krishna consciousness, our advancement depends on our attitude. Number 2, our practice must be regular. Number 3, it must be attentive. Number 4, it is goal-oriented. And number 5, it is done according to one's personal capacity. So I'll say them, and then please repeat. Here are the characteristics of strong sadhana. It is performed with the proper attitude.
It is performed with the proper attitude.
2, it is regular. 3, it is attentive. 4, it is goal-oriented. 5, it is done according to one's personal capacity. So there's an attitude. Attitude is everything. And Prabhupada mentions in a purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam about heroes. And that one can be a hero in the material world, or one can be a spiritual hero. And the material hero is one who becomes carefree about interacting with the material world and becomes expert at enjoying his or her senses in the material world. And in that sense, sometimes we see people who are flamboyant or who are expert in with some material talent, and who have an attitude that I can do anything. And they do anything. And therefore they become famous in society as great heroes because they are great sense enjoyers. Does that description bring to mind anyone in particular? Let's not mention any names, but can you think of anyone, like a public figure or someone in history who's become a great hero, who is expert at something and especially in enjoying her senses? Yes? In sports? How about in music? Yes. In fact, I was walking in the park the other day, and I saw a can of something lying on the ground, and it said rock star. Actually, I know what it is. It's an energy drink, extreme energy drink. I think it's like drinking 50 cups of coffee and injecting, cocaine at the same time or something. I don't know. But people drink that. But the name of it is telling. It's rock star. Because people think, like, if I could just be like a rock star. Otherwise, how do they sell that rock star drink? Stay up all night, do as you wish, and be a complete sense enjoyer. And this is heroic. It's a kind of heroics in this world. People admire that. One who can seemingly not care about any rules and regulations and simply be a personality. So then Prabhupada says that there's heroes in the spiritual realm. And those are living entities, people who control their senses. And it may not be as immediately apparent to the world that these are great souls. But Krishna says, Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakriti mashrita bhajantyananya manaso gyatva bhutitam avyayam. That the Mahatma, or the great soul, the great hero of the material world, is one who takes shelter under the Krishna's higher energy, his internal energy. And this is really heroic, because anyone can learn to be a big sense enjoyer, but it's a much more difficult proposition to actually control the senses and to take shelter of Krishna proactively, voluntarily. In any case, it's interesting because the word hero is, it invokes feelings of awe or respect for others. And so we should know that as we face the challenges of our practice, even the tiny victories that we have make us heroic in this world. Make us heroic in this world and set us apart from the image of the materialistic hero. So don't give in to the impulse or the propaganda that one who is carefree and doesn't control the senses is heroic in this world. This is not the opinion of Krishna or the great souls. But even if one is an insignificant person with a fledgling practice in devotional service, if one controls the senses and disciplines oneself, which is one's prerogative, and one can do by right execution of free will, one becomes a hero and will be recognized. In fact, Prabhupada once said, when he saw how the devotees, especially when they went back to India, the American devotees, they went to Surat, and they also went to Bengal. And Prabhupada brought these Western devotees and paraded them through the streets with big kirtan parties. And in Bengal, the devotees came out in Navadip, and the local Bengali devotees, they were grabbing the earth that the devotees had walked on for the kirtan, and they were collecting that dirt and putting it on their bodies. And Prabhupada was noting that wherever these Western devotees were going, they were being worshipped. And he said, this is because you're following the 4 regulator principles and chanting 16 rounds. You've become heroes. It's a fact. Worldwide. If someone simply, quietly, behind all closed doors, is sincere and follows the 4 regulator principles, chants 16 rounds with as much focus and concentration and sincerity as possible, that person will become a hero, is a hero, and will be recognized by others as a hero because it's such a rare thing. And also, just in the realm of being able to teach Krishna consciousness to others, those who are careful in their own practice will have potency. It is the quiet execution of strict devotional service when nobody's watching that gives one potency to actually speak about Krishna consciousness in a way that affects other people. Otherwise, one may dazzle the audience with one's erudition. However, unless that discipline is there, the effect won't be very deep. In fact, there are many platform speakers. In Vrindavan and Kartik, we see thousands of hoardings advertising these speakers of Bhagavatam and so forth. And as Prabhupada noted, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta noted, this Bhagavat Saptaha, sometimes people become very expert at reciting the pastimes of Krishna. During the break, they'll go have a cigarette or anything else. They're not strictly following. They've just become expert, like a musician becomes expert at something, but their heart's not in it at all. No good effect. In fact, an adverse effect for one advancing in devotional service. Prithu Maharaj, in his prayers, noted that when a devotee who's pure in heart speaks, the sound vibration touches Krishna's lotus feet, and it dislodges the saffron particles that are there at Krishna's feet, and the sound vibration is mixed with that. Mixed with what? The saffron mercy particles. So in a poetical way, but in a palpable way, one can experience this when one hears from someone who's staunchly engaged in devotional service and is practicing, following the acharya and carefully administering the process of devotional service sincerely. This person will have potency to teach others about bhakti. That's one of the reasons it's important to preach. In one way, it forces you to remain pure, because you know you won't have any potency if you don't. And on the other side, you can see and you get immediate feedback from your environment when you're going out to teach Krishna consciousness to others about how much your practice is having effect. For instance, you may have to endure insult or rejection. And how do you endure insult or rejection? Unless you have purified your heart. It's very difficult. And therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentioned that one's chit sharira, one's spiritual body, is nourished by chid rakta, spiritual blood. And he said one gets spiritual blood by going out and preaching. And by doing so, you have to face adversity and rejection. And by doing that, one develops this chidrakta, this spiritual blood. And that nourishes the spiritual body, the siddhadeha. So practice is important, both the practice of going out to preach Krishna consciousness to those who don't know about it, and to not become angry at them for any reason. For instance, in Srila Prabhupada's word-for-word translation of the verse, which most of you probably know, Mahatsevam dwara mahurva muktes tamo dwaram yoshitam sangi sangam mahantas te samachita prasangta vimanyavak surida saravoye. This verse by Rishabhadeva in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In this verse, Rishabhadeva says that the door to liberation is opened by association with great souls, with devotees. And the door to hell is opened by association with materialistic people. Then he says, Vimanyavak suridak sadavoye, that Vimanyavak means that one must be without envy when teaching Krishna consciousness. And it means, and Prabhupada put in parentheses, this is very unusual in his word-for-word translation of the verse, Vimanyava, he said, one must, in parentheses, he said, one must be able to preach to others, materialistic people, without becoming angry at them because of rejection. And this helps, this practice actually tests our own sadhana, the kind of concentration that we have and the kind of taste that we're getting from the holy name. Because by practicing the basics of Krishna consciousness, chanting Hare Krishna, listening to the holy name, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayara Haitukam. You will get knowledge and detachment as concomitants from your practice of direct bhakti, hearing and chanting about Krishna. Very quickly you'll get these helpful assets, which are knowledge and detachment from the world. And of course, we heard the verse recently, Tachchadadhana muneyo jnana vairagya yuktaya paschantyatmani chatmanam bhaktya shuta grihitaya. That's fortified by knowledge and detachment. The serious student of Krishna consciousness can move ahead very steadily. How is everyone so far? You're all okay? Okay. I was still doing reviews, so I should move ahead because we don't have all day, Vaisesika Das. Yeah. I wish we did. In the Madhya Lila, this goes to attitude. Still talking about attitude a little bit because it's so important. One attitude of a person who's advancing in his or her practice is to keep one's eyes trained to spot offenses. Keep your eyes trained to spot offenses in yourself. And there's a list of offenses and what are called anartas, or unwanted values within the heart that can crop up in the heart. And just as an expert gardener gets to know different kinds of weeds that come up at various times of year, a strict practitioner of bhakti also gets to know the different kinds of categories of anartas and becomes expert at taking them out. One thing I know from working in my own garden is that it's much easier to take out weeds when they're first growing. We just had some strong rains recently, and I noticed just this morning when I was chanting japa out in the garden that there are thousands of little weeds coming up right after one rain. And my gardening guru taught me, get them while they're just coming up. Because he showed me that with a little hoe, actually I have a little device called a hula hoe. You can only get it online, as advertised on television. The hula hoe. And anyway, the hula hoe, you just use that, and he said all you have to do is disturb them, and they won't grow when they're that small. So if you can find the anartas when they're just popping their little heads up, and you can understand that these are anartas, you can identify them. You can if your eyes are trained to spot these kinds of things, then you can go and take them out very, very easily. If you allow them to put roots down, and then the ground gets hard, it's really difficult to pull them out. Then you have to go one by one and pull them out. Just like sometimes people allow a habit to develop into an addiction. Habits are something that you can change with some endeavor. But addictions take a Herculean effort. In fact, you have to go get therapy practically to overcome addiction. And so much outside help, and even after you've overcome the addiction, sometimes there's still a question about, is it going to come back? This is mentioned in the Yoga Sutra that if one allows oneself to indulge in anartas, unwanted kinds of sense gratification and mental processes, that they can develop such a deep impression in one's mind that they come to the level of addiction. And then they become much harder to root out. So better if you live a clean life and stay above the fray in the material world. Don't get caught up and think that it's okay just to do this one thing I can let down here, because it can lead to difficulty in one's spiritual life. Be trained. Train yourself to be vigilant in pulling out the weeds when you see them. And also align yourself with people who are strict, serious, and sincere in their practice so that they can chastise you. and they can notice things about you and say, stop doing that. Don't do that. It's just that one phrase from a respected devotee who says, don't do that. I notice you're doing that. Don't do that. Don't go there. It can shock you a little bit and bring you back to your senses. The enjoying spirit is like a drug. It gets into the veins, and and then you think, I can enjoy this world. The opposite is the serving spirit, where you think, I'm a servant. You don't have the enjoyment. There's enjoyment, yes. In fact, Krishna describes in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Bhaya sparshe swasaktatma vindit yatmani yatsukam. That the real happiness comes from within. It's an ever-increasing kind of happiness. The enjoying spirit that I'm independent of God, I can enjoy my senses independently and so forth, is the enemy of the soul. So don't let it creep in. It takes one away from the real experience of Krishna consciousness, which even in a small dose can give one such impetus to go to the next level. If one can simply experience, even in a small way, the happiness that comes from practicing Krishna consciousness and hearing the holy name as a sound vibration that's not of this world. This, as Prabhupada describes, the experience of waking up in Krishna consciousness. One's chanting Hare Krishna, for instance, and hearing the holy name, and has an experience that I've never heard anything like this. This is not from this world. It's something else. I don't know what it is, but it's not from here. And just those initial experiences can give one impetus to move forward in one's practice more and more. So this attitude of avoiding apparatas, that I'm the person who avoids them. I'm careful about it, which is another aspect of attitude, and that is carefulness. And not only must we practice Krishna consciousness, but we should also be careful, because practicing spiritual life is like a razor's edge. It's very sharp. You have to walk down the center. Be careful. If you're inattentive and you think you take your eyes off the goal, then you can slip, and then there can be bloodshed. You can cut yourself. And then you have to use alum. And then you have to mend. So we talked about Narada Muni's devotional practice, and how he first saw Krishna and was able to experience the highest bliss by his practice, and then he lost it, and then he mechanically tried to get it back and wasn't able to. So devotional, it's non-mechanical. We must do our due diligence, but depend on the mercy of Krishna to descend. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur talks about this in the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam in regard to those advancing in the practice of chanting Hare Krishna, that just as it takes some time for a fruit to ripen on a tree, similarly it takes time for a devotee's practice of chanting Hare Krishna to mature. Don't think that it'll happen immediately, and don't demand it immediately. Think of it as a process in which the fruit is ripening on the tree, and be patient. Okay. And also, in attitude, one must avoid resentment. What does this mean? That if you're practicing devotional service and you're not advancing in your estimation as quickly as others are advancing, don't resent that. Just take whatever you're getting from Krishna, whatever situation you're in, that's for you. And whatever situation others are in, that's for them. And don't resent the principle that others may be more advanced than you, because this is a stumbling block in devotional service. Be satisfied with the advancement that comes to you. Be humble, and this is the basis of all advancement, according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Trinadapi Sunichena. Be as humble as a blade of grass. that's something that Krishna also mentions in the Bhagavad Gita as the precursor to knowledge. That is, one has to be humble. Sadhana should be regular. Regular. Every day you have to do your practice. Set out a certain number of rounds, a certain amount of reading, a certain way in which you practice, and do it every day. And after a while, it becomes what Srila Prabhupada called getting practiced automatically. Because we all are creatures of habit, and we develop habits one step at a time, which is a good place to start in developing the devotional habit. One step at a time. Just start where you are and make a new habit in Krishna consciousness by a little filament of practice and adding another filament the next day, another filament the next day, and after a while you have a string, and if you keep going, then you have a little twine, and then you have a rope. And then you have like those ropes that pull the cart at Jagannath Puri. They're so big, I could barely fit my hand around them. And they're unbreakable. And so one step at a time, we can increase our practice by being regular. Consistency over time. So you should go for this consistency. That's an important word in practice, consistency. Consistency over time develops faith, just like in a relationship. If over time your friend always does what he said he's going to do, for instance, in a business relationship, Dilip, Prabhu, you can attest, you can give testimony to this. If you have a business relationship with somebody and they do what they say they're going to do, over time you develop what?
Develop a good friendship with them, and then you know what they're going to do. It's going to come through. Sometimes they say something and then they don't do it. You know, you're in two minds.
Yeah, then you don't trust them, right?
Trust them, yeah.
It's hard to trust. Otherwise, nice what you said. You develop a friendship, and you know what they're going to do. You start to trust them. And similarly, if we have consistency over time, Krishna starts to know what we're going to do too. It's not that just we have to develop faith in Krishna. He also has to have faith in us. Why should he have faith in me? What have I ever done to show consistency in the practice towards him? People say, why doesn't God do this for me? Why don't you be more consistent in your relationship with God? What have you ever done for him on a consistent basis that merits his attention? But if you're steady and you practice consistently and you do what you say you're going to do for Krishna, then very quickly he'll develop this faith in you. Ananyas chintayanto mam yejana paripasate tesham nityab yuktanam yoga kshemam bahamyaham. For someone who's consistently thinking of Krishna, Krishna says, to that person, I carry what he lacks and I preserve what he has. He becomes personally involved out of a sense of love for that person. Yoga kshemam vahami. Vahami means that he personally carries what the person lacks in devotional service. And the devotee feels it too. He knows Krishna's personal hand in his life. And that's when the practice becomes thicker and thicker, because the devotee is actually wanting to please Krishna by his practice, and Krishna is wanting to please his devotee. There's a reciprocation there. So consistency. Everyone please say consistency. Consistency. You can look it up. We have the American Heritage Dictionary right in the front row. Let's hear what consistency means. Also, it's a good idea in your practice to squeeze out all the opportunities for Maya to slip in. And Haridas Thakur showed this by example, because he was chanting Hare Krishna all day long, and the local police officer became envious of him and thought, why is Haridas Thakur getting all the attention? Everyone's worshiping him and so forth. You know, why not me? I used to be the big man in town. I'm going to discredit him. So he set him up. He set a woman there in the middle of the night to try to attract his attention, and then they had cameras or something set up. They were going to, it's like a sting operation. They were going to get him to fall down and then say, "Just see, he's nothing," and discredit him. But when the woman came in the middle of the night, Haridas told her that, "Sure, whatever you like, I'll be happy to accommodate you, but first I have to finish my rounds." And then he kept chanting. His rounds went all night long, and next morning he said, "Sorry, I couldn't finish. You come back." So she came back the next night, and he said, "Yes, I'll definitely accommodate you, but I got to finish my rounds." So he chanted it again, and he said, "Sorry, I didn't finish." And she waited all night. And the third night, and then finally, she admitted that, "I was sent here to set you up." And he said, "I know, but I wanted you to hear the chanting." And she, by that time, hearing the chanting of Haridas Thakur, she became a pure devotee. So there's a lesson in it for us. If you can stay up all night chanting, fine. But we shouldn't try to imitate Haridas Thakur. It may not be possible. But the lesson is this, that if you have regular, consistent practice of devotional service, when Maya comes knocking in any of her various forms, you can just say, "Sorry, I don't have time right now. I'll be happy to take care of you later, but right now I don't have time." And then just never have time. That's the thing. You should never have time for Maya because you have other obligations. And make sure that you have those obligations to fall back on as an excuse. And just say, "Sorry, I can't go right now. I'm busy. I can't accommodate you." That's in the category of regular devotional service. And it's important in regular devotional service to accept failure as a pillar to success. Because as we practice anything, we're going to make mistakes. But don't give up. Mistakes are necessary to make advancement. Prabhupada mentions in the light of the Bhagavad that failures may not be detrimental, they may be the pillars to success. If you take it like that, then you'll get stronger. You learn from the mistake and you move on. Sadhana should be attentive. This is the third element of powerful sadhana, attentiveness. In fact, as most of you have probably heard, in discussing the 10 offenses against the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has mentioned that inattention is the root cause of all the other offenses against the holy name. Inattention is really we are units of attention, so to speak. We're conscious living beings. We're experiencers. We experience the world. That's what we do. At every second, we're experiencing something. And we can point our attention in any direction. Let's just try it. Point your attention in some other direction besides up here. See what happens. Did you see something different? It's available all the time. So when you selectively point your attention towards your practice of Krishna consciousness, it means something. It means something very practical. And there are lots of opportunities for distraction in your practice, not the least of which is cell phones. It's one of the number one distractors in public lectures and in private also. Everyone carries a cell phone, and it becomes a source of distraction. Right when you're just starting to chant and you're tasting the name, then the phone rings. I got to get that. Organize your life so that you can be attentive to your devotional service, and you'll make rapid advancement in devotional service. Some ideas about attention. There's been much written about attention and how to achieve greater attention. You can refine your power of focus. And I'll just give a few ideas about very practical techniques that will help you to focus more on your practice of devotional service. Shall I? Yes. All right. One thing is to write down what your intentions are. There's something about writing things down that very much impresses the mind. And if you don't write them down, it may just be a a fleeting idea that goes by, and the attention, you don't solidify it. But if you solidify your intention in writing, it becomes more meaningful and you become more focused on it. And that means it's going from subtle to gross. It's becoming more manifest in your life when you write it down. After all, it's just a thought. A thought is a thing, but it's subtle. If you take it and you transfer it into pen and ink and you put it on paper, that's also energy, but it's a little more solidified. It's a little more on the gross platform. And as you continue in that direction, you'll come to move your hands and legs in a certain way and get a certain pattern going because you wrote it down. So here's one idea. Jim Rohn used to preach this all the time. He was a motivational speaker, but I took this one mantra from him. It was very powerful. He said, decide what you want and write it down. This is the technique to goal setting in general. It's simplified to these 2 points. Decide what you want and write it down. So in your devotional practice, decide what you want to do and write it down. Nobody can stop you from doing it except your own mind and the power of procrastination. But if you decide, I'm going to write it down, I'm going to decide what my devotional practice is, you get to frame what your practice is going to be. So that's an important step, although it sounds simple. And you can get yourself a book and keep that book for your notations for your practice as well. And keep a record of what you're doing and write down your realizations from your practice. Another point, which also involves writing, is to map out your day. If you try this tonight as homework, I guarantee you'll see a marked increase in focus. Map out your sadhana the night before. Write it down. What are you going to do? What are you going to read? What's your mood going to be? What's the time period? You can put down details if you want. But if you write it down the night before, when you wake up in the morning, your mind will go right to that paper and right to the list of that you wrote down. And then you'll have a way of overcoming the unruly mind. My friend Pushpadanta Prabhu, who had 2 sons many years ago, told me that he always had to, when his sons were growing up, they were young, he had to wake up before they did and control the house. Because if they got up before he did and they got control of the house, there was no getting it back for the rest of the day. So then we were talking about how that relates to our practice of devotional service. If your mind gets ahead of you before you have a chance to start your practice, then it's very hard to catch up. But if you start ahead of the mind and define what your mode of practice is going to be, what the mood's going to be the night before, when you wake up, you'll be able to focus. Another is to create the proper environment for your practice, because the environment is very important. You know, Rupa, Sanatana Goswami, the 6 Goswamis, they went to Vrindavan. And Vrindavan didn't have any construction projects going on at the time, except for the excavation of holy places. It was very beautiful, serene, peacocks, birds chirping, kujat kokila hamsa sara sagana. Tirye Mayura Kule, described by Srinivasacharya how the cooing of the cuckoos and so forth. A nice environment. So if you find yourself a nice environment in which to practice devotional service, it'll be very helpful for your attentive sadhana. If you try to do it in congested places, it's much more difficult. Another couple very practical things are that take a break if you need it. Like if you're chanting very intensely, if you need to take a little break, have a drink of water, something like that, do it, and then regroup, start over again. Another thing is to time what you're doing. If you time yourself, there's a way that, and you're attentive to the clock in doing your devotional practice, you'll be a little more focused. by the power of the law of forced efficiency, which means if there's a point in time at which you have to finish, you're much more efficient than if there's open-ended in any task that you do. And that includes in your devotional practice. And then one other thing that I've found to be very helpful, especially in chanting, is to record whatever I'm chanting. Or at least periodically, not all the time, but I'll make a recording and then I'll listen back to it because it makes me much more aware. If I'm chanting into a tape recorder, then I'm more careful. And I feel like somebody's listening. And now I have to listen to it, and if it's not done well, then I become aware of it, and I start over again. These are ways of becoming more aware, which means you can become more attentive. And attentive practice of devotional service has a huge payoff. It's very quickly effective, whereas inattentive devotional service may take millions of years, literally. So try this, being attentive, and there are a few practical tips that I've mentioned. Goal-oriented, I think I've covered that enough. I mean, you can never cover it enough, but we've talked about it. And then finally, number 5, I haven't said much about this. Sadhana should be according to one's personal capacity and taste. And that may sound interesting after all the things we've said. But there's a way in which everyone has a capacity to perform a certain amount of practice. What was the word I asked you to look up? Consistency. Let's hear that, and then let's hear capacity.
So Maharaj, consist means to be made up of or composed. And then consistency is number 1, agreement or logical coherence among the things or parts.
Agreement or logical coherence?
Among things or parts.
That's pretty good.
Number 2 is compatibility or agreement amongst successive acts, ideas, or events.
That's good.
3 is degree or texture of density, firmness, or viscosity. And consistent is an adjective, means in agreement, compatible, uniform. And it comes from Latin consistens, consistent, which is part of. Consistere, to stand still.
To stand still. Mm-hmm. Okay. And how about capacity? Sadhana should be according to one's personal capacity and taste. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Uddhava tells, Krishna tells Uddhava, rather, Svestvayadikariya nishta saguna parikirtita. And that is that when one does one's practice, when one performs one's duty and devotional service according to one's adhikari, one's qualification, then it's a good quality. And then he says the opposite is true, that if one tries to do more than his capacity, it's a fault. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur expands on that, and he said, if you do less than your capacity, it's also a fault. Don't try to do more than you're qualified for, and don't do less also, because both are causes for fall down. And the way he explains it is, before my poor Bihari, maybe I can intercept your question, but he says the climbing of a ladder. Once you put your foot on a rung of the ladder and you feel that it's firmly there, then you must move to the next rung. Don't linger. But if you don't have a firm footing on one rung, don't try to jump up 3 rungs, because you may slip and break your neck. So it's a consistent climb, and you can, when you understand for yourself that you have a firm footing, move up. That's the next step. What is capacity?
Capacity is one, the ability to receive, hold, or absorb.
The ability to receive,
hold,
hold,
or absorb.
I like that. So we have an ability to receive, hold,
or absorb.
and absorb. We have to be able to receive, hold, and absorb what we get. And yes, more.
Then B is a measure of this ability, volume. Then 2 is the maximum amount that can be contained. For example, a trunk filled to capacity. Number 3 is the maximum or optimum amount of production. 4 is ability to learn or retain knowledge. 5, the ability to do something, faculty, a capacity for self-expression. 6, the quality of being suitable for or receptive to specified treatment, the capacity of elastic to be stretched. Number 5, the position in which one functions, role, his capacity as the host. Number 8, legal qualification or authority, the capacity to make an arrest. And then an obsolete is capacitans, a capacity crowd. It comes from Latin capacitas, capax, spacious. So it comes from spacious.
All those definitions sounded relevant to me.
Yeah.
For
I like the one which
devotional
said,
sadhana.
I like the one which said the maximum or optimum amount of production, where you were saying that you should not do things below your capacity. It has
Right.
to be up.
Optimize. Continually optimize. Okay, now we'll take some reflections. I've touched on the 5 items that I advertised as being important for advancement in devotional service and some other points. So let's hear what kind of reflections we have from hearing over the last 3 days, these points. Reflection means any one thing that you heard that's stuck in your mind. Govindacharn needs a microphone. Oh. Okay, go ahead.
No, he was asking me to pass it around. If anyone asks.
Oh, okay.
But I have a question. Maybe I can start.
Okay, go ahead.
Maybe could you elaborate more on this capacity thing, how to identify the capacity which we have? You did give the example, very good example of the rungs of the ladder. But I was thinking sometimes the mind might trick us into believing that, okay, this is your capacity, so don't push for more. So I might settle with the status quo. So is there some way to distinguish this and tell the mind to push myself further, read more, or chant
Good
more
guidance is
attentively?
important. Others who are advanced in devotional service have a greater capacity, can sometimes help and guide us. And I've seen practically, I met a devotee who was chanting maybe 6 rounds or 8 rounds or something like that. And he met a devotee who was a very strong preacher who said to him, "Why are you chanting 8 rounds? You should chant 16 rounds." And it was a very advanced devotee who told him that, who has been consistent in practicing devotional service for many years. Therefore, he had some potency. And when he walked away, that person said, "Oh yeah, okay, I should chant 16 rounds." And he increased his capacity because of the advice of somebody who could see in him the fact that, he had more capacity, he just wasn't using it. That's one way to take guidance, good guidance from others who have more capacity. And if you are engaged in a practice of devotional service, but then you find yourself looking for other kinds of engagements that are not Krishna conscious to fill your time, that may be an indication that you need to increase your sadhana. And that may be a case of not acting up according to your capacity, looking for other kinds of mundane engagements, which are signs of anartas, according to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who mentions that one may begin to think that one can improve one's devotional service by doing all kinds of things that are unrelated, that I need help from unrelated sources and so forth, and one becomes entangled in those, studying all, kinds of tangential subject matters and things like that. That may be a case where one is doing less than one's capacity. Much of it is internal, as mentioned in the Bhagavatam. Bhakti parishanubhavo viraktir anyata traisatrikik ekakala prapadyamanasi tasnata tushti pushti shuddha payonugasam. And that is that as one is eating food, he or she knows what the capacity is. I mean, you get good at it. Of course, there are sometimes people overeat because it's a compulsion. And then they have to go to Weight Watchers or something, and they say, "Slow down. You don't have to. You don't have to eat so much. Eat a moderate amount and so forth." And then but in general, if one is a little bit of attentive, one can understand how much food to eat. And I've had enough. Like sometimes, you've had enough, and then someone says, "Hey, well, how about this? Have this pie?" And it's like really full, but I'll have it. And so you can tell. You can tell, if your stomach's half full, if you're completely satisfied, and so forth, if you haven't eaten enough. This is the example given in the Shastra, that you should see for yourself what kind of appetite you have to be able to take more. And so in business, in prasadam, one should not be shy. In other words, if you're hungry, you should ask for more. Don't think, I want to ask you, this is the social custom. And in business, you should ask for what you need and what you want and so forth. Don't be shy, otherwise you'll be left behind. So be a little bit, don't be shy about taking on more devotional service and increasing your vow. If you feel that the capacity coming on, you feel a little hunger, you feel that you have more to do and you're not doing it, don't think I'll stay back, I'll just hang back here because that may be too much or something. Try it, move ahead, take more. So internally watch, take your temperature, see how full you are and so forth and what you can handle. Also, on special days like Ekadashi, you can, or other times when you have the opportunity, you can really load up on your sadhana and then see how that fits. You get a chance, a week off or something like that. Increase your sadhana. And then it may stick because you may feel like, oh, I've been doing too little. No wonder I haven't been getting a taste. When I chant 25 rounds, then I really start to feel some momentum. 16 is not enough for me. Or if you chant 64 rounds, then you feel like I should do this every Ekadashi or something like that. You should take these risks and have a big feast on, do more. Try to sit down and read Bhagavatam for several hours, 5 hours, something like that. See how you feel afterwards. Just as in sense gratification, what happens is, according to the Yoga Sutra, we get an impression in our mind from sense gratification. You go and you have some kind of experience, and then it leaves an impression of vritti that's permanently, well, not permanently, it's imprinted on your mind and in your consciousness. And then you keep coming back to it and think, I got to have that again. Although it's insignificant. Krishna says in the Gita, a wise person doesn't go for that kind of happiness because it's really not there. It's just tactile. It comes and it goes. So it's not significant. So similarly, in devotional service, we take these opportunities to make an impression, a strong impression from doing more at certain times. We'll realize our higher capacity. And we'll think, oh, I've been cheating myself all this time. Why don't I do more? And then you can step up. So whenever you see an opportunity to do that, increase. and see how it fits. And Krishna will empower you. Really, being able to maintain any vow of practice in Krishna consciousness is an empowered activity. We make our own endeavor, but ultimately you have to be empowered. Those who can maintain 4 regulative principles and chant 16 rounds every day are being empowered by Lord Nityananda. It's special mercy to be able to maintain that. And to do more, it also comes by mercy.
Thanks.
It's a good question, yes. Another one?
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for these wonderful points. Just one question was popping up my head is the other side of the coin is we can go into the mode of self-accusation when we are constantly failing some goal. For example, one practical example is if suppose somebody has a very hectic work schedule and he's not able to get out of that, so he might not be able to get up every day very early, let's say 4 o'clock. He may not be able to get up. And that might create some kind of self-accusation, so which also may not be very healthy. So just wanted to know how to make a balance and constantly feel encouraged in the devotional service.
Adjust so that you can do what you can in the situation you're in now. If you can't wake up at 4, make sure that you get up at 5:30 or 6 or whatever it is, so that you have a solid, regular practice. And once you become proficient in that and you have a taste for it, then you can increase. Otherwise, if you artificially try to do something that is not possible, sleep is a good example because it's really hard to cheat sleep. Really hard. It's one of the hardest things to do is to cheat sleep. So if you regulate any of your senses, then gradually you can stair-step to higher levels of proficiency. So start with what you can so that you can do the amount of sadhana that you need to do every day. And then increase from there. I've seen people cut way back on sleep and then they fall asleep at all the wrong times. Like while we're hearing Bhagavatam, just a collapse as soon as they hit the floor. While driving a car, they can't drive and they can't do service and so forth. So that may not be practical for the sake of cutting back. Therefore, Krishna says in the Gita, a very practical thing, yukta hara viharasya, yukta chaitasya karmasu, yukta swapnava bodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. Regulate all of these things, sleeping, eating, recreation, and so forth. Regulate it. And as you regulate it, then you can actually control it to the point where you can increase what you want to do. Be practical. But regulate it. It doesn't mean that get up any old time you want. It means find a time that you can handle. Start doing that proficiently, and then the way you give up sleep is you have something much better to do. I've just noticed this. If your mind is active in devotional service and there's something you much rather do than sleep, then you don't sleep. Because the mind, as soon as the mind, if you're just lying there and all of a sudden your mind remembers, I really wanted to do this thing, you'll jump up. You have to have something better to do. And that means you got to get a taste, from your sadhana, and then you can practically do it. Yes.
Maharaj, for this capacity, something else in there too. It is also, as you mentioned, our expectation. Our expectation need to be there in order to develop that capacity. A small example I can say that when we go to the book distribution, some places are so packed up, there is no car parking. But people who have the book distribution, they know that we look for the Krishna parking. And that we know somehow that parking is there, and we drive in there, and somebody is just pulling out, we are pulling in, just getting in there. That kind of expectation before that, and we are giving that trust that it is there. Same time, sometimes you are going with a book and having a prayer, And then people coming and we showing the book, oh my God, I was looking for these things. This come to our way too, that expectation. So it is increase our capacity in a way with our faith too.
Nice. Tate anukampam susimikshimano bunjana ivatma kritam vipakam. The devotee should always expect Krishna's mercy. We should have expectation that Krishna will give his full mercy. And with such a hope, with such expectation, one will be eager to practice. Shraddha?
So, Maharaj, thank you so much for the wonderful lecture. I missed part of the series and I'll go back and listen to that. But the recap certainly helped me a lot. You had talked about the Chit Sharir and the Chit Rakta, which nourishes the Chit Sharir. And you had mentioned that you get the Chit Rakta by doing preaching. And on the preaching, you had also mentioned, quoting from Srimad Bhagavatam, that when you preach, you should not get angry with those who do not know about Krishna consciousness. Along the same lines, I had a question about hurting the feelings when you are preaching to people. For example, when I go door to door, they are very impressed with what we are saying, and they really like what we talk about, and then they'll start offering us food that they have cooked, which is obviously not prasadam. And so how do you get out of these tricky situations, or is there any harm in just taking that?
It depends what it is. I mean, if they're simple things, then we can take them in the fire of yajna. And that is, we're accepting offerings on behalf of Krishna. That's what devotees do. They accept on behalf of Krishna, and they take them. So if someone offers you some simple preparation, that's okay. If obviously it's something that's tainted, then you can just tell an alternative that, we only take bananas. We're on a banana diet, or something like that. People will respect that also. It doesn't necessarily hurt their feelings. It's just they'll appreciate that this person is. I mean, everyone has a diet nowadays. I'm a gluten-free vegan. Only eat on Fridays. Everyone has some kind of restriction. So I don't think it's nowadays disrespectful to tell that you have a diet, but especially for somebody who's a preacher. You can say, we only take certain things. Why don't you give this? Or you could very tactfully just say, just give water. That's all we need, or something like that. Okay? Yeah. Yeah, but it is tricky. Prabhupada mentions this in Nectar of Instruction about can someone absorb the offerings given, and you have to be careful. Because Prabhupada mentions that somebody who's not very advanced should be careful in the kinds of offerings they take. Especially, he said, from Mayavadis. You can't absorb that kind of thing. It'll actually contaminate you. Yes?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I had a question. Earlier in the session, you said, if you succeed in something, and even if you don't have heart in it, it doesn't please Krishna or it's fake. But isn't it kind of impossible to succeed in something if you don't have your heart in it?
So, what did I say?
You were saying if you succeed in something and if you don't have your heart in it, it's fake, or.
Well, I'm not exactly sure which statement you're referring to, but I may have been talking about sincerity, and that one should be sincere, and that there should not be pretense. And if motive is important in performing devotional service. In other words, if my motive is to please Krishna, even if it's something very simple that I do, Krishna will notice it, even if nobody else notices it. There's a story in the Chaitanya Bhagavat about the housemaid of Srivas Pandit, and during the Mahaprakash ceremony at his house, devotees were coming, great devotees were coming from all over, and this housemaid was doing a simple service of collecting little pots of Ganges water and bringing them for the bathing ceremony. And she was staying out of sight, basically, but Mahaprabhu made a public announcement that who's bringing these. And then she was introduced by Srivas that this is our maid, her name is Duki. And Mahaprabhu said, her name now is Suki. And there's a lesson in that even if we're behind the scenes, if we perform sincere devotional service that's unpretentious, then Krishna will notice it. He's noticing the simple, pure devotion. And I may do something that's grandiose, but with the wrong intention, it may not be as much appreciated by Krishna.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Prabhu. I just wanted to share first my point that you said about how we should record what we hear. I did that once and found that I was missing 3 to 4 mantras every round. So that was like alarming for me. Like then it means I'm not even chanting my 16 rounds properly. So that really helps, that point. And the question that I had is the sadhana, when we talk about what we should do and increasing and everything, like sounds so attractive. But when we talk about consistency and maintaining it over a long period of time, what becomes the motivating factor is some distinction or some adoration that we get from our peers or some devotees that like flares up and we do a lot. But then when they are not around us and when whoever is inspiring us, they are not around us, or the peers who are encouraging us or appreciating us are not around us, then the intensity of the sadhana or whatever we are doing goes down. So what should be the real motivating factor that we could cultivate so that we can do this throughout our life consistently?
You should pray to Super Soul within your heart and become aware of the fact that he's the witness. And also become aware of the fact that other people care sometimes about what you do and other times they really don't care. That mostly people really do care about themselves and their own business, their own practice, and how their lives are going. And in that regard, Krishna says, Suridam Sarvabhutanam, I'm your best friend. Everyone else in the world, you may have different kinds of friends who care from time to time and peers and so forth, but they may not have that capacity. They don't have the capacity that Krishna has, the kind of appreciation that he has. So you really have to cultivate an internal awareness of the fact that Krishna is the one noticing. And a lot of times that, when you're being criticized and you are under fire from others, is a time when you can really take shelter of Super Soul, when things are going wrong. That's why sometimes it's the greatest opportunities in your devotional life when you're really challenged, when you find points in your life that you really can't deal with and you realize nobody else can either. And that you're helplessly dependent on Krishna, Super Soul. And you can realize that he's really the only one. And if you cultivate that, then there's a kind of satisfaction in everything that you do, that you're doing it for Super Soul. This is sort of the spirit of, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's talking about, don't do it for any other reason, just do it to please Krishna. And if you do that, then you'll feel completely satisfied. You can practice doing that, and that's what yoga is. Become more aware, that more and more aware of how Krishna is your friend. He's there within your heart. He's the one reciprocating with you. And then tune out the other desires to do it for satisfying other kinds of less important purposes. It's not altogether unimportant, however, to please the devotees, or the fact that you may be getting accolades from the devotees is also a sign that Krishna is pleased. Because devotees are intimately connected with Krishna, and if they're encouraging you, you're saying, well done, you're doing well, and things like that. And on the opposite side, if you're getting a lot of helpful criticism from devotees, then that may be Krishna helping you also. So it's a matter of consciousness, Krishna consciousness. And if you're conscious of Krishna, and you offer what you're doing to Krishna, you'll feel the reciprocation in anything that you do. And there's no replacement for that. That's the essence of our taste in Krishna consciousness, that relationship we have with Krishna, which is altogether available. It's Krishna's right there in the heart, and he's saying, "Give me, just give me, and I'll take it." And as soon as you do, then you're yukta, then you're connected, and then you're happy. And over again in the Gita, Krishna says, if you're yukta, if you're connected, then you're happy. Then you'll feel satisfied, and you'll be properly situated. So just be yukta, connected to Krishna through yoga. All right. And now we have a text that just came in. Yes? Okay, just after Vaisesika Shiromani. And then we'll end there and have a Artik ceremony.
I just thought about this when you were saying about capacity, that initially when we started practicing, actually, we might not be doing what we are doing now. I mean, of course, I'm not saying that I'm doing best now, but slowly as you said, you get instructions from seniors, you get more services from seniors like your guru or other devotees, so slowly you're able to fit everything in. If you had gone back and thought at that time, you would not know how you had fit all these things in your schedule. But somehow you are able to, because they say right along with the instruction also comes the ability to do it. So when some higher authority gives you something, then you are able to naturally fit it into your schedule. And then once it fits in, then it remains year after year. It doesn't go away.
That's a really nice point. And I've seen practically devotees who, they'll be struggling with 3 rounds, 5 rounds, whatever, and they can't do more than that. And then you see them 2 years later, and they're no problem. They're chanting 16 rounds. How'd you do that? It's just they took the instruction, they tried, and they got empowered. Capacity can increase by Krishna's mercy and by the instruction of others. Really nice. Thank you. Okay, a text just came in.
So this text message is from Jonathan Prabhu, and he's actually quoting from...
in Honolulu.
Yes, Maharaj, yeah. He says, aloha.
Aloha.
And he was quoting, this is the reference to your comments about capacity for performing devotional service. And he quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam 4.4.13, where Sati quits her body, that part. And he's pointing to the purport, which I'm just going to read a few sentences from there. So he says, everything depends on the strength of the recipient. For example, due to the scorching sunshine, many vegetables and flowers dry up, and many grow luxuriantly. Thus, it is the recipient that ceases growth and dwindling. Similarly, the dust of the lotus feet of great personalities offers all good to the recipient, but the same dust can also do harm. Those who are offenders at the lotus feet of a great personality dry up their godly qualities and diminish.
Jonathan never ceases to amaze us. No, he's deeply
true.
going into the Shastra and thinking about these things. Very nice. Good work, Jonathan.
Yeah. And this is from Malini Mataji. She says, Hare Krishna from the Sankirtan team in San Francisco.
Jai!
Just checking in.
Hare Krishna. That's nice. They went, I think, to Haight-Ashbury today to distribute books. Fantastic. Well, this has been a really exciting session, 3 sessions talking about sadhana the last few days. I really enjoyed it myself. And there's so much more that we can say about it. I like it because it's practical. It's something you can reach out and touch tonight or tomorrow morning. And there's nothing that, it's a little bit philosophical, but it's so practical. And the application is right in front of us. Birds fly in the sky as high as they're able, so whatever capacity you have, take a look at it, and then make a plan. No one can stop you from increasing your sadhana. Analyze it, look at it carefully, and see what are the things that you can do to improve the quality, the quantity, and so forth, and make a plan. And once you have the plan, your mind will go there, and then you're on your way. So we'll continue this another time, and in other forms, we can focus on different aspects of it. And right now, we're going to have an Artik ceremony. So with great care and attention, but efficiency, we'll put away all the Shastra deities that are on the book stands, put away all the asanas, and then we'll stand up and get ready for the Artik ceremony.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, 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 hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.